Welcome to the Raven Knoll Show. I'm your host, Raven C. Knoll. I'm a wife, mother, counselor, mindset coach, and speaker, helping you win from within. So I wanted to be a little bit lighter today. If you are a female leader who is experiencing overwhelm, or if you've experienced overwhelm in the past, whether you can pinpoint the source of it or not, today I want to give you 3 steps to overcome overwhelm as a female leader fast, okay? So let's go ahead and dive in. So before I get into those 3 steps of how to overcome overwhelm, let me start by saying there are typically 3 reasons why you may be experiencing overwhelm. Now write these down because I'm going to challenge you to come back to them later, okay? So make sure you get a pen and paper out and just jot these down really quickly. So number 1, your workload. That's probably the most obvious, right? The most common, or where people think overwhelm comes from. So this can be overworking. This is like long hours, not necessarily giving yourself those time constraints of, hey, I'm getting off at 5. I'm not going to be here till 7 or 8. A lack of boundaries, overcommitting, having a work-life balance that is completely off. I like to call it a work-life rhythm because I don't truly believe in a work-life balance. I think it's more so of a work-life rhythm and a system that you have to put in place for yourself. But that's one reason your workload or what you have on your plate is just too much, right? And this is very common amongst what they usually call yes men. I like to call it yes women because you overcommit and give a yes to more than you have the natural capacity to handle or carry. Even if you are a strong-willed goal getter, we all have a capacity cap. This is something I talk about all the time. And so those that are used to working, usually give a yes to too many things that you can't naturally handle or carry. Even if you've been able to do it in the past, there are different things that happen in life that begins to shift our capacity. And so you may be a yes woman where you're giving a yes to too many things. And then number 2, you could be triggered by the thought of responsibility. That is another way that overwhelm hits people. And I just talked about this. I made an Instagram post about this just a few days ago that so many people could actually relate to. I got so much feedback from that Instagram post, which I didn't even realize that this was a thing for so many people. But this tells me that it's a true statement because so many people were able to actually relate to it. And so you may be entering into a season or a time in life where there's more responsibility that's going to be added to your plate, right? You may be feeling like you're stepping into a heavy season of purpose and God is calling you to do things outside of your comfort zone. You may feel like you're being stretched in your capacity in this season by the responsibilities that you're carrying. And so just the thought of that responsibility can begin to trigger a feeling of overwhelm, okay? Anybody follow me so far? Anybody can relate? Just that thought of what else is to come, or that thought of what else is possible, can begin to trigger that overwhelm. If you can relate to that, just give me some hearts on the screen, okay? So it's very likely, very common, but people don't always pinpoint this as the source of overwhelm, okay? People always associate overwhelm with overworking or their workload or their work capacity. And so people don't typically think that the thought of more before stepping into more would actually trigger overwhelm, but it does, okay? So the thought of more before you even step into more can trigger overwhelm, okay? It has that capability, all right? And so number 3, another reason why you may be experiencing overwhelm is because your current efforts, your career choices, your business structure, or just your leadership responsibilities in general may not be aligned with what's actually fulfilling and purposeful for you. Okay, this is another reason why people are triggered by overwhelm. Whatever you're currently stepping into when it comes to, it's like being pre-tired. I like that. Whatever you are stepping into as far as like career endeavors, whatever career you're currently in, whatever business you've built for yourself, whatever structures you have in place, if it's not fulfilling and aligned purpose, as purpose work for you, it can become overwhelming or trigger the feelings of overwhelm. And so I've seen this a lot in business owners who feel like they've built business structures that no longer align with their lifestyles, okay? Or offers that they've created and they feel stuck in them, right? You feel like, man, I've been offering this for, a while now, but I don't really feel that this is purposeful anymore. It doesn't align with what I want to do, or it doesn't align with my current lifestyle. Like those that before you have kids and then after you have kids, it's a whole different way of living. You know what I mean? And, before, when you're an entry-level worker compared to like a manager or a department overseer, it's a whole different situation. And so things shift and things change. And so it may not be aligned with what you feel is purposeful. And like I said, also, I've seen this in corporate careers. They feel like, people feel like they're pretty much capped in their position, or they're not appreciated for their work. And so just those thoughts of sitting in that and being in that can also trigger overwhelm, okay? So there's two sides of the spectrum, but both are experiencing feelings of overwhelm. Both are experiencing something similar, right? Y'all following me so far? Good. Okay. So the first step, whatever your leadership responsibility is, whatever career field you're in, if you're a business owner, if you're climbing that corporate ladder, whatever that looks like for you, the first step to overcome overwhelm as a female leader and to do it fast is to pinpoint the source, right? That seems obvious, but it's not so obvious, right? You're feeling overwhelmed. You're living in this space, in this place of overwhelm. You wake up overwhelmed. You go to work overwhelmed. You turn that computer on overwhelmed. You go to sleep overwhelmed, but you're not doing anything to pinpoint the source of overwhelm. It becomes so familiar to you in such a way of living that you almost accept it as this is just what life is. But we don't have to live like that, okay? So you have to figure out the why behind the feeling, okay? You have to figure out the why behind the feeling. Now, overwhelm is typically connected to four emotions, or four emotional responses rather, okay? Stress, tiredness, busyness, or boredom, okay? It's going to be one of those four things, guaranteed, all right? So when you are overwhelmed, it's going to come down to four things, four emotional responses: stress, tiredness, busyness, or boredom. Okay. Those are the four areas. That's where it's coming from. Okay. And so I just made it pretty easy for you to be able to pinpoint the source, because I just gave you three common specific reasons why you may be feeling overwhelmed. Out of the three things that I just mentioned, okay, earlier: workload, thought of responsibility, alignment with what's fulfilling or purposeful to you. Where do you feel like your source of overwhelm is coming from? If you had to choose between those three tiers, where do you feel like your source of overwhelm is coming from? Is it coming from one, your workload; two, the thought of your responsibility, that pre-tiredness; or three, you don't feel aligned with what's fulfilling or purposeful to you or for you right now in your life? Is it workload, thought of responsibility, or you're not in alignment with what's fulfilling or purposeful to you right now? Okay, so that's step one. Okay, we have to pinpoint the source. So some of you have already said, okay, here's the source of where this, overwhelm is coming from. So you're acknowledging the why behind your feeling. Okay, and that's step one. We are acknowledging the why behind the feeling. Okay, that's important. All right, so number two, now you need to prioritize yourself as your main priority. This is step number two. You have to learn to prioritize yourself as your main priority. Now, this can be hard for moms. This can be hard for wives. This can be hard for those that have heavy leadership responsibilities within their careers. This can be hard, right? It's a very hard thing to do, especially when people are calling on you or requiring you, to show up in a certain capacity, or depending on you and your leadership skill set or your viewpoint. And so this can also be hard for those that are just used to putting other people first, not necessarily putting themselves first or taking care of their needs, but taking care of the needs of others before their own. This can be hard for people pleasers, those who are triggered by the thought of offending others. This can be hard for perfectionists, people that, because it may require you to actually be open, transparent, and vulnerable. And that feeling of being open and transparent and vulnerable can trigger the fear of rejection for perfectionists. And so if you removed the responsibility that you have to everything and everyone else, how can you prioritize what you want and what you need right now? That's a real question that you have to sit with and ask yourself. Even if people don't agree, even if some people get offended, even if it looks like you're being a little selfish, even if it requires you to go above and beyond what's normal, quote unquote, for you, how can you prioritize what you want and what you need right now? And like I said, that's not an easy thing to do, but this is the fastest way to be able to overcome overwhelm. Okay? Not the easiest thing, but the fastest way. And it can be very difficult, right? Especially if it's not a norm, especially if it's not something that you're used to doing. But you really have to sit with that question. And that's not a question I can answer for you. That's not a question I can give you, the answer to, because it's really personal. It's really up to you to think about, okay, how can I prioritize what I need and what I want in this moment? Right? And so that's a question I really want you to sit with and think for yourself. Okay. And then number 3, this is going to be an either or a both and. You kind of have to choose, okay, with this one. But number 3, you got to get better at delegating and paying for convenience. Okay. Listen to me. Y'all be paying for everything else but internal peace. You will pay for everything else but internal peace. You want to pay for your nails, your designer shoes, these outfits, couple $100s on luxury car notes. And I'm not bashing any of that because I like nice things. I have nice things. My aunt knows. But I also make it a priority to not only delegate, but to pay for convenience. Okay? Because whatever is going to remove the overwhelm and produce internal peace, I'm going to pay for that. And your girl's going to do it real quick. Okay? Because peace is priceless and there's no price tag on it. Okay? Peace is priceless and there is no price tag on it. And so we want to pay for a lot of other things. A lot of other things. We want to pay for a lot of things that cover up the war that we're having internally, that keep us busy and not facing ourselves. But we don't want to pay for internal peace. And one of the ways that you do that is you have to get so much better at delegating, and you also have to think about, how can I pay for convenience? And that's different for everyone. Right? Whatever is convenient for you to remove the overwhelm and produce internal peace is going to be different than it is for me. But these are the things that we have to sit with and we have to question. And we have to really think about, like, oh my God, like, what can I do to make sure that I'm doing these things? Okay. So those are the 3 steps to help you overcome overwhelm as a female leader fast. I didn't say they were the easiest steps, but those are the fastest ways for you to be able to overcome overwhelm. Once you're able to pinpoint the source, you then have to figure out, this is the source of my overwhelm. What do I need to do to prioritize myself as a priority so that this thing does not continue to overwhelm me? And you do that by delegating and paying for convenience. That is how internal peace is going to be produced. Okay? So, not the easiest thing, but the fastest way. I always get The same question, Raven, how can I work with you? And so I want to let you know that my 8-week intensive, Mindset to Momentum, is open for enrollment. So if you are interested in working with me, this is for overwhelmed female leaders who want to accomplish at least 2 of their personal and professional goals by transforming their thinking without burning out in 8 weeks. Okay. Now, this is the intensive version. Come 2023, after I have my baby, it's going to be a 6-month program. Okay. So if you want to get in at this intensive version now, you want to do so. It is an application-based program. So if you are interested, you will have to apply by going to mindset2momentum.com, and then you can apply. You can also DM me goals, and I will answer any questions that you have about the program. Happy to do that for you. So if you are a female leader and you're ready to ditch the overwhelm and finally achieve your goals with ease, let's do this work. Recommendations for communicating to others when they are invading your peace. I think, one of the things we tend to do is that we want to we don't want to offend people in a sense, right? Especially if those are, close loved ones or those that we really care about, like close friends and different things of that nature. But sometimes you just have to choose you, and you have to, let people know that this is a boundary for me, and I'm not gonna, right now, depending on what it is, I would just say something specific like, hey, that's just not going to work for me right now because of X, Y, and Z. And you don't have to give full definition or full detail to what that is, but you have the right to enforce boundaries as needed. And at first, people that are not used to putting, boundaries in place, it can feel like you are, being wrong, or you can feel like, maybe I shouldn't be like that, or, maybe I should be more open to this or open to that. It can feel a little bit like, it doesn't feel good at first. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's either your peace or my peace. Like, that's what you really have to come to resolve with. It's either I'm going to be here upset, frustrated, irritated while you have peace, or I'm going to choose me and allow myself to have peace. And me putting a boundary has nothing to do with you and everything to do with me. So if people get offended by your boundary, that's not a you problem, that's a them problem. Because what you're doing is really making sure that you are taking care of you and putting yourself as a priority. So I would just communicate it in a way of letting them know this is not going to work for me because X, Y, and Z. And you don't have to give full detail or definition based on what you feel. And they have to sit with that and process that themselves. It's not up to us to get people to process our boundaries well. We don't have to be rude about it. We can do it in love, but it's not up to me to pacify or make sure that you feel okay about my boundaries. It's up to me to enforce them. So that's how I would go about it. Everyone has a level of anxiety that's very normal and natural to the everyday, living. But if it's something that's a little bit more heightened, this may be something that you want to work with a counselor or therapist with, just depending on how severe it is and how often it's happening and how it's being triggered. But I would definitely say that when you do have anxiety, what anxiety really is fear of something that is yet to happen. That's what anxiety is. That's pretty much what it is. It's fear of a future occurrence, fear of a future instance, fear of a future situation, fear of a future outcome. It's something that you're fearing that is yet to happen. And that's really where anxiety is being triggered. And so if you become paralyzed when you do have that anxiety, I would definitely take a moment to kind of like step back and acknowledge what's happening in the moment, because we never want to suppress or try to push away to the side our feelings. We want to be able to acknowledge them and accept them and realize what's going on. So you can say right now, there's a lot of anxiety that's happening. And then you want to track, is there certain things that are happening in life that triggers that anxiety? So I know you said that you have a trouble organizing your thoughts and your priorities, but what is triggering it? What thought is triggering the anxiety? Like, what exactly is happening? Can you track like the instances in which your anxiety is being triggered? Like, what specifically happens? Is it a thought of you getting something accomplished? Is it a thought of you making progress? Like, what exactly is happening that's triggering the anxiety? That's something that we have to figure out too, which is important, because a lot of times people have the same things that in life that triggers that anxiety. Some people get afraid. Some people are, like someone like me who used to really struggle with social anxiety. I was triggered anytime I had to be the center of attention, using my voice, using, my communicating. I would be triggered anytime I thought that I had to speak up, or anytime I thought that I was going to be the center of any conversation where all eyes were going to be on me. I realized that was the source and the trigger of my anxiety. My anxiety didn't come from, like a fear of the future or anything of that nature. It was the fear of how I was going to be perceived once I did open my mouth and speak up. That was the fear for me. It was the outcome I had yet to see, but that was the fear for me. So hopefully that makes sense. So I would say, first and foremost, you want to figure out what's triggering the anxiety. What is the common denominator in a sense of that trigger? And then you want to take a step back and really process through. Use journaling. If you are getting overwhelmed and you're starting to feel paralyzed when you are trying to make steps and movement forward, take a step back and start journaling through these things. Okay. Journal through the thoughts, journal through the feelings, journal through the fear, like what's happening. Talk, these things out through writing. But if it is something that's a little bit more heightened and a little bit more consistent, then I would suggest working with a counselor or therapist, because there's many things that can help with kind of sourcing through that. Talk to you all soon.
This has been the Raven Knoll Show. Thanks for listening. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to this podcast so you're the first to know when new episodes are released. And don't forget to leave a review. If you can't wait until the next show, follow along on Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter at Raven C. Knoll for more tips and to keep the conversation going. Go ahead and DM me on Instagram or take a screenshot of this podcast and share it to your IG stories. I want to know about your takeaways from the show. Don't forget to tag me and use the hashtag RCNPodSquad. Lastly, visit my website at ravencnoll.com and join my email list to get exclusive bonuses only for my email subscribers. Thanks again for rocking and rolling with me. I'll talk to you soon.